And we are live. Hi there, people. Today we're going to have a little talk about this thing that people like to pretend exists, and we call it free speech. You know, that thing that we do not have in Europe. I mean, there are people who think there is free speech in Europe, but no, there isn't. Is that a problem? Is it a problem that we do not have free speech? Now, we are going to elaborate and we're going to think about this, and I'm, very interested in what other people have to say. And of course, this is because of the bullshit happening in England, where they denied 3 people access to the UK because they didn't like their point of view, even though they have no problem with letting people in who do the worst things in Great Britain. Anyway, Dick Cheesehead is going to join us. Welcome back, mate. It's a long time ago that you last been live with us. And I've got Axel with me.
Hello.
Raven. And guys, I have to say, Real Raven, they dropped out another tune not too long ago. His stuff is bloody brilliant. You really should check it out. And hi there, John, and hi there, Warped, and hi there, Malachite, and hi there, Marcel. As I said, today's talk will be about free speech and whether we have any. So to begin with, Real Raven, you wanted us to show something to the good people at home.
Yeah, something to start off the discussion. Maybe it was a video from Tim Pool that I saw the day before yesterday, or that he posted the day before yesterday, after Brittany Pettibone and Lawrence Southern were both detained and sent back, basically away from England. I don't know if you've heard the story, but so they were banned from. I haven't prepared the video, but I took a little bit of issue with what he said about it. But let's just get down to the meat of the thing first, to explain what happened to people who haven't paid attention. So Brittany Pettibone and boyfriend, what was his name? Thomas Söllner, I think, Austrian right-wing identitarian. They wanted to go over to England to. She wanted to interview Tommy Robinson, right? And boyfriend wanted to go to the Speaker's Corner in Piccadilly Circus, where it's kind of one of those few places that is supposed to be under this special protection for free speech.
Yeah.
And apparently
by Parliament even.
Yeah, so it's kind of an exceptional one. Anyone can go there and talk. I think that there is some minor exceptions.
No, there's only one exception: no incitement to violence.
That's what I meant. That's the one I meant. The incitement thing. I mean, incitement to violence. If it's violence, I think that's okay. If it's hate, it's a different story. I think hate and violence, or like violence and even just what was that when you offense, right? Offense is kind of turned into violence nowadays through the newspeak mechanisms. So they kind of say, "Oh, but that's a kind of violence, because I'm offended, and that's kind of violates me." So it's not like physical violence; it's kind of more metaphysical violence. But okay, notwithstanding that, they didn't even let him go there. Brittany and Thomas were detained, and they said in their recap, they said they made a mistake, that they didn't tweet out what was happening, and their phones were obviously confiscated, so nobody knew what was happening until it was a little bit later. It was then is it Tommy or Timmy Robinson? He said that he suspected that they were gone, right? But it took a lot longer for the public to cop on, and obviously mainstream media did not report on it at all. And the other case was, and they were detained for 3 days and then sent back. And Lawrence Southern was basically more or less sent back straight. They detained her for 6 hours, I think. 1 hour under they have the Section 7 special terrorism paragraph, where they can basically investigate you under this special rules where they don't have to give you a lawyer, and they can try and force you to like hand over. They obviously make you hand over your mobile phone and then try to crack it for you. If you're lucky enough, it's a Apple phone or something. You can. Obviously, they can't force you to tell you the PIN number, but they'll try and threaten that anyway, you know. And she was afraid because obviously they might like look at some shit posts and like take them the wrong way. But now the interesting bit, right? The point of contention was Brittany Pettibone got a document. A fairly badly spelled document that gave a reason for why she was being deported. And the way that she, I think the main thing that she mentioned was that she had scheduled the interview with Tommy Robinson, right? I can never remember whether it's Tommy or Timmy. Is it Tommy?
I think it's Tommy, yeah.
Tommy Robinson, right? So that's the main one that she brought out. Now there's another one. The other one was that they're basically that she was basically planning to do the activism with her boyfriend, you know, to go to speakers' corners, and that might incite. I don't even think that they mentioned violence, but it incited. What would it incite? Maybe hate or something. We can actually look at they shared the thing on screen, but what's interesting? Okay, so be that as it may, right? It may be a complex number of reasons why they were turned away, or there may be a main reason. It was definitely once you mention Tommy Robinson, you're basically persona non grata. If you say I talk with this person, I rubbed shoulders with him or whatever, then you're kind of a spoiled goods for them. It's like a disease almost, you know. It's like you have some sort of a bacteria on you or some virus, you know. So that is
Tommy Robertson points out what is wrong with the society and the way that the governments are basically treating the English citizens as second-class citizens. And he's pointing this out, but this is not something that the English government wants to see or hear. So that he points out what is happening means that he is the problem, not the fact that there are rape gangs in England. No, that's not the problem. The problem is that Tommy Robinson points it out.
Yeah. And that it's also bias, you know, that he is right wing, you know, that he has a certain political idea, you know, that he says like.
But they call him right wing because he points stuff out.
Yeah, no, but I mean, he has maybe it's like I wouldn't even say conservative, but he has a certain maybe slightly identitarian kind of angle on it, and the reason why he is so much hated is that he's also on top of that working class. Because, you know, he actually lives in the thick of the problem. He actually suffers. He's actually being molested by people, you know, from the other side. Like he got run. His car got run in by another car, like with Asian people, you know, maybe Muslims. I don't know, but they have him. They really dislike this guy. And then only recently he was accosted by some Antifa, like some people who were kind of hiding their faces. 8 people tried to beat him and his girlfriend up, but you know, on the outside of McDonald's, you know. But so he's very well hated by certain groups of people, you know, and he just won't shut up. And he is working class, and I think that's his problem. If he was some politician saying the same things, they might still deplatform him, but they wouldn't attack him as hard. They wouldn't. I think it's really the problem that he's not like he doesn't seem to have a political motivation behind it. It's the motivation for him and his family, as in living in a community. He's fighting for his community, so he's like fighting for his cause from the inside rather than from a theoretical kind of standpoint, like from a principle standpoint, if you know what I mean. You know, so you're not attacking just a principle, but you're attacking a group of the population. And that's what makes him so dangerous, I think, because he's genuine, So
but
anyway,
but the reason why he's dangerous is not so much even the message that he's trying to spread, but the fact that it's based on reality, and they don't want reality to be seen.
Yeah, he's like he is from a demographic that is really dangerous, because it should be a demographic that should naturally be supportive of labor, because it's working class, and it's really paradoxical that most of the labor supporters I know are like middle class, It's just like
don't support labor anymore.
Yeah, it's like almost a misnomer. It's like everything's upside down, I don't know too much about English politics, but it just seems to turn around that you're not really doing anything to the laborer, to the blue collar person, if you're labor, and if you like support immigration, and if you now this recent thing with the other sex grooming scandal again, and nobody talks about it. Okay,
go for it.
It's crazy. But so what I took issue with was Tim Pool made a video about Lauren Southern, and also touching on Brittany Pettibone being banned from the United Kingdom. Now, I haven't prepared the clip. I was on the road most of the day because my wife got surgery. But what he said was that he thinks that there's a big difference between Lauren Southern and Brittany Pettibone, because Brittany Pettibone was more or less just there. One of the main things, apart from wanting to interview Tommy Robinson, was that she was supporting her boyfriend in his activism. So she was an activist. Mm-hmm. And in a way, okay, I can understand that. And Lauren Southern is a partly activist as well. Obviously, when she did the stunt with the, with the boats, the migration boat. So she did some activism, but she's also a journalist. I mean, undoubtedly, she is a biased journalist, but she is a journalist. So the what Tim Pool says, and he's a journalist, is that you shouldn't conflate the two, and that you're making more damage or that it's people use the journalism as a excuse for the for whatever. For getting away with things in the activism that they wouldn't get away with if there was no freedom of the press. Okay, I think that's
the thing, though.
Central thesis.
How is it possible that they have to use freedom of press if we don't have freedom of speech? Or rather, it's proof that we don't have freedom of speech. Because if we would have freedom of speech, then freedom of press means nothing.
Yeah, I think that what Tim says is that I'm not quite sure what the thinking behind it is. Obviously, I'm not inside it. I'm not like a journalist or anything, so I don't know what the special rules are. Obviously, one thing that you would think as a journalist is that there's a certain ethic attached to it, right? That you try to talk about the truth, or talk about like what's happening, on the ground, and you may still have bias shining through, but there's a certain ethic, certain set of research that you would do, or that you'd expect a journalist to do, although you see less and less of that nowadays anyway. So if you go through journalist school, then you get a set of ethics taught. But at the same time, when I see that if I just look at the actions in isolation and say that, okay, one thing would be the interviewing Tommy Robinson, and another one would be the speech on Speaker's Corner, and that's activism. But the interview is still journalism, and that if you can get Tommy Robinson on the Hangout today, or Andy Warski gets him and talks with him, then that's also journalism. You can still say, okay, maybe it's also a form of entertainment, blood sports or whatever, but it's still also a form of journalism if you ask questions and get information about a situation, about an insight into a situation, and the guy has a lot to tell. You know, it's not like he's just an activist. He actually, a lot of the stories he has to tell, he's actually experienced himself, you know, and like, okay. So, and I think that's one of the jobs for journalists. You go like on the ground and you talk with people who are in the country where a thing is happening, you know, you interview them. Okay, so I took a little bit of issue with this what Tim Poole said, because I think you cannot you should not judge somebody by their function. Let's say, are you now an activist? Now you have the activist hat on, and that's everything you do is invalid, and it's just for your own kind of you know, to follow your own goals. Or now you have the journalist hat on, and you're completely objective, and everything is just, it's just so nice. Because if you look at what most of the mainstream journalists do, is they just look the other way, or they just just at their bias. You know, they at their bias and say, well, you know, like the police that detained Brittany and Thomas, where they said, well, if you were meeting with Thomas Robinson, then it's straight away a reason. That's actually the main reason we kick you out, you know. Nothing else, because you talk to this person. So I thought that we should really jump on this and turn it into a matter of principle and say, okay, if that is the if that is the case. And Tommy Robinson said, okay, so you're saying that I did hate speech, but you haven't actually accused me of it, so you're liars, basically. So I think we should turn it into principle and say, okay, find every single one person, and there's mainstream media outlets as well who have interviewed Tommy Robinson, and then make a list of those people and send it to the British government and demand that they all be banned from visiting England.
And that
to see, you know, turn it into a principle, I think.
Piers Morgan interviewed him on TV. It was quite a stir.
Who?
You're a bit soft now.
Yeah, can you turn up a bit, John?
I'm not sure how.
Hear you, mate.
Eat the microphone.
Eat the microphone. No, what did you say, John?
Piers Morgan interviewed Tommy Robinson. It was quite well renowned.
Yep.
So that would be the first name for the list. I think we should really put the list together, you know. And in earnest, then, you know, because why should there be, if on principle of talking to a person that is virulent, if that is the principle to detain somebody from the country, then you cannot make the distinctions unless you add other variables like, but you're American, so you can't come. It's allowed to people from England, you know. Maybe,
that's
you know.
The same thing, though. I mean, they were talking about how they didn't want Trump to visit the UK because he's negative, but they have the Prince of Saudi Arabia coming over.
Yeah, didn't want Trump, but that's all talk, you know. I mean, I still want to see them turn Trump back if he lands, you know. I want to see that, because that would be that's just all talk. But they can do it obviously to people who haven't got any like political clout other than their fan followings, you know.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
But the thing is they are blocking all these people for the so-called violence. But the ISIS warriors, they are invited back, and they even get money and housing. So this is not really consequent.
That's true.
So where is this line? You are going to block people from other Western countries because they have the wrong opinions, but ISIS fighters who have committed atrocious acts, they are not only welcome, they get bags of money. So what is this? What's behind this? We all know what's behind it.
I think the mainstream media or the politicians, they just close their eyes. I don't think they're really aware what a danger they have invited into the country, or maybe they don't want to know. But they definitely, I don't they perceive it as danger. It's more like the bigotry of it's the soft bigotry of low expectations. They say, okay, these people are just a little bit retarded. They may blow up shit, but it's only because they are not privileged, and we'll deal with the ones that do the atrocities and put them into prison, and the other ones will kind of.
I think that's partial the thing, but I also think it's pampering. How do you say it in English?
Empathy.
Well, they are not pleasing. That they are acting positive towards them in the hope they are not victimized. It's also a kind of weak and cowardice reaction, I suppose. Yeah. So in the hope they will not get attacked because they were so tolerant of them. Let's take another example. Here in the Netherlands, we have a party, the Greens. It's called Green Left, and the leader of them wouldn't mind to work together with the Rotterdam Muslim party, and they are quite theological. So and because they are, he said, because they did progressive things. Well, this is mind blowing. I know, yeah. but they rather work together with far right ideologies like these extreme Islamism, then they will admit their mistakes and faults.
Yep.
So I think it's more cowardice. It's weak and pathetic. It's cowardice.
It is cowardice because it's easier for them to attack the West because it's easier to attack an enemy that they know, or to attack their brother than an enemy that they don't know. They don't know what, they don't know what the reaction will be. So yes, there is a fear. They'll say, oh yeah, you as a privileged Westerners, Brittany Pettibone or whatever, to you it's just a joke anyway. If we lock you up for a day and then we send you back home, you're not really losing anything. So I don't think they take that seriously. So they don't take a principled stance. They're more. It's more like they take it very lightly, And I think that's where activism should take them. The activism should say, okay, if that's the rule, then you either have to take a principled stance and say, okay, there has to be an official law or something made that whoever touches this Tommy Robinson guy is persona non grata, needs to be deported, and then obviously that's going to open up another whole can of worms, because there's no official statement that says that Tommy Robinson is illegal or something. It's just assumed, when you look at the letter that they wrote for Pettibone, I think we should try and get that on screen. I'll find it out. Even the grammar was wrong. It was obviously just put together by some police officer. It wasn't like an official thing that came from. There's no official kind of ruling. It's more like it's kind of filtered down, and they assume that that's what the politicians want, or maybe there was some vague directive that said we hear that there's certain right-wing elements trying to enter the country and kicking up a stink. Can you make sure that they be turned back? And then let's just put something together without really thinking about it. I don't think that there's a there's no principle behind it. There's not really a set of rules behind it. It's all kind of made up as they go along.
I also think it's an easy score, because a guy like Tommy Robinson, if you're an authority and attack him, there's no consequence. All the people are patting your back. Good job, well done. You took the
we had the same. But we had the same in the Netherlands, because and Tommy Robinson isn't a politician. But we had the same with Pim Fortuyn 12 years ago in the Netherlands.
Oh my God.
The left attacked him so much that in the end he got killed by someone. And that's when the politicians recognized, no, wait a second, we fucked up. But that's like 12 years ago. And we're seeing it happening all over again.
Yes.
This is scary, because there is no free speech. There is speech that is allowed. But if the politicians or the powers that be, whatever you want to call it, if they disagree with what you have to say, you will be silenced. That's basically what's happening.
It's not all in the law, it's also social, because these intimidation tactics are not only allowed, but they are facilitated. So it's always like violence from the left is cute or something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I think that there's definitely there should be a way to expose this very easily. I think that it's a pity that it wasn't known for that they were actually being detained for 3 days, because we could have probably kicked up a stink much earlier, if it was officially known that people were being detained. Because I don't think they've thought it through, and I think they're very vulnerable right now. It's very easy to attack that, because it's not that, and I don't think that England necessarily needs a constitution, although it would be nice if it had one, in order to be vulnerable to, to somebody who demands that justice is done on a principled stance rather than on a case-by-case basis decided by some customs officer, and maybe a group of politicians somewhere. That's not like how justice should work, how the law should work. That shouldn't be like, there's this one person and we don't like him, and so we'll just make something up. That it should just be a principled thing that applies to everybody. That's it.
I agree.
We should go back to the rule of law. You don't need constitution for. You do not need a constitution to be beholden by the rule of law, but you need to be able to recognize the rule of law. And apparently we now have basically 2 sets of law. One set for the indigenous Europeans and one set for the new Europeans.
Yes,
and
yes.
That is somewhat problematic in my humble opinion.
Well, you are giving, let's call them minorities. You are giving them a very big stick to hit the locals. Let's put it that way, because the hate speech laws and stuff like that. It's only one direction. So what you do effectively is giving one group of people, let's call them the minority, a very big stick to hit the people who are already living here.
Yeah.
And also what also is happening, because you give them these privileges, they also feel victims. It's like if you're born here and your parents have migrant roots, every time you go to school or other authorities or whatever, you get this message: you will never come as far as a local white guy because you have migrant roots. So it's also inflicting this low esteem and minority.
Well, you get the bigotry of low expectation, whilst at the same time the self-fulfilling prophecy. Well, I mean, if you're not supposed to score high, then who gives a fuck? And that's not how it is. We should return to the rule of law. These are the laws. They are the law for everyone.
Found something else as well. I just searched for some clip for the reason for why they were being detained, and there's a really interesting one, a really interesting reason that was I found really flabbergasting, which was that they refuse somebody that is probably not conducive to the public good. So they can just say, you are probably a bad element for society.
Yeah.
And that's all. They don't even need to give a reason. They just say, you are probably a bad person. That's amazing. That completely gobsmacked me when I heard that. Let me just show you this little bit. Can you hear the sound?
And confirmed that Selner, Pettibone, and Southern were all detained and not allowed into the UK. Border Force has the power to refuse entry to an individual if it is considered that his or her presence in the UK is not conducive to the public good. a Home Office spokesperson said. Looking at both notices of refusal of leave to enter the United Kingdom, it seems that racism is the official reason these people were banned.
They didn't actually mention racism, though. It's the interesting thing. They keep it much more general and say it's not for the public good. It's not great. It's they maybe cite hatred. You know, there's no concrete stuff. Lauren Southern brought in the. She had this thing with Allah is gay, these leaflets, because they basically mirrored a BuzzFeed article that said that Jesus was gay. So they thought maybe we should make an LGBT rainbow kind of stand and annoy the shit out of people by handing out these flyers. That was in a previous activism that they did, and they probably thought of that when they thought when they detained Lauren Southern, you know. So she's definitely going to piss off the Muslims, you know. And then obviously she's going to talk with Tommy Robinson as well. And that's another point, you know. But they never say it's about Muslims. They don't even say the word Muslims. They just say the public good, the public interest. Yeah. I think like it's a pity. Like, I mean, if you had funds, you should have a lawyer there and say, okay, sorry, that doesn't count unless you give it, you have to fill it out with some flesh, you know. You can't just say, you're not good for the public good because, you know, your nose is too long, whatever. Yeah, give us a reason. Wrong color of skin, you know. You have to hammer it out somehow, you know. You have to say, okay, what's going to happen, you know. And they interviewed Lauren Southern and asked her, would she condone running over people with cars? Yeah. Because they thought that she was planning on some, well, it almost sounded like she was planning on some terrorist activity herself. You know?
Which makes sense, of course. I mean, we know that all the trucks of peace have been done by Christians. Oh, no, wait a second. Well, some of the trucks of peace must have been done by... that's not right either.
They have the bollards now, so we're safe. And did you see the Gary Lawson one? They had some bollards on the seaside and said that that's probably against if there was ever a boat of peace.
Boat of peace. The thing is, though, if they get a truck of peace, those bollards won't stop them.
I'm all in favor for the helicopters of peace.
Helicopters of peace. Can we just drop a few bombs of peace, perhaps? No, that's not nice. I'm not going to advocate for violence. I'm not going to tell you to attack people. I'm not blah, blah, blah. This is banter, people. Don't take it too serious.
But do you think there
is something seriously wrong when we think that people will do this because this is being done to us?
Should there be a difference between journalists and activists? Should they be treated differently in the law?
No, I simply don't think so. Because if we treat one class of people different than the other class of people, we're creating a classist system.
Yeah,
I'm not in favor of that.
Now, I found the immigration notice of refusal to leave to enter. You have asked for leave to enter the United Kingdom as a visitor for 5 days, but as you stated in your interview, I have reasons to believe that you are seeking admission to the United Kingdom to interview Tommy Robinson, a far-right leader whose materials and speeches incite racial hatred. So that's, even if that's not proven, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, a man, a completely different person, has incited hatred, okay? So that's one thing. Welcome. And therefore you can't go in because you are going to talk to this person. Oh, that's completely blew my mind. That completely blows my mind because, like, literally, take a principled stance, guys. Anybody talking to this guy now has to be deported from England. Give them the list and tell them, okay, either you let Brittany in, or you lock everybody, like you said, Piers, what's his name? Piers Morgan, not Piers Brosnan. Lock him out, you know. You stated at the interview that you will be filming your boyfriend Martin Sellner's speech at Speaker's Corner in London Hyde Park. Your boyfriend admitted at the interview for being a co-founder of the Austrian branch of Generation Identity, which is viewed in the UK as a right-wing organization. Again, that is very... They might have something there, but it would have to at least be on an official list, like on a banned list, on something, but you know, on a blacklist. But what
even if they're right wing?
Yeah.
Even if they're right.
This language is completely. It's rubber, you know. It's just which is viewed in the UK as that doesn't say anything. It doesn't say whether it's the government viewing this. Is it just the?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You know, what it boils down to is this: they've decided that they're right wing, and they've decided that right wing is bad.
It's contagious. It's virulent, and it's.
And there goes the problem. There goes the free speech. If you are not of my political opinion, then you're right wing, and therefore.
But why? That's not the problem. It's not just because it's there. It's because it's contagious. It wouldn't be a problem. It would not be a problem if person A talks to person B and person B is hateful. That would not be a problem because it wouldn't change anything. The problem is that the far left has this idea of virulency, of it's contagious. It's like a disease. So if you touch Tommy Robinson, you will also be bad. And everybody who touches him, who talks to him, is going to be bad. It's like the one blood rule in the Third Reich, you know.
The one blood rule.
Yeah, but it's also what if Tommy Robinson exposes all the stuff and the shit that the left is hiding under the carpet? I think that I think.
Well, that's obviously they can't say that.
No, but the thing is, they keep suppressing. But if you look, we can look at history, whatever. But these people, their children getting raped, their society, their neighborhoods gone all to shit, and the only thing they get from the governments is you have to shut up. You are bad civilians. I don't think this will end very well if this is not addressed, because at some point these people are fed up with everything. They are not going to listen to the authorities anymore, and we don't know what will happen then. And at the moment they start brawls in the street, all diplomacy goes off the table, and that's also the thing where Tommy is afraid of. At the moment they start fighting in the street, it's the beginning of the end. And that's what will happen, because with this suppressing, you only radicalize the people more and more and more.
And there's
I think that they underestimate the amount of support he already has. You know, the amount of like people who think that that's probably incorrect. And you know, they'd say, they don't. These people don't count because they're just working class people, and they're just in certain areas. You know,
we in the Netherlands call it an underground wildfire.
Yeah. I'm going to say hi to Alicia, by the way, guys. Hi there, Alicia. Welcome for showing up. We're talking about free speech or the lack thereof. And welcome for joining. You said you wanted to join last time, so got you in.
Yeah, I didn't get your Twitter till like just now. So sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I was pretty late as well because I had to work till 11, and it's now. Well, I had to work till 11. I go live at 11:30, so I had about 20 minutes to set it all up. But yeah, you're still a little bit late, but that's okay.
Hey guys, can you hear me now?
Yes, John, we can.
Sorry, I went off and found some software and downloaded it, and now I've got a way of adjusting the volume of my microphone.
You should just fix your computer, mate.
Well, that's what I just did.
It works.
I didn't have a control for my microphone. Now I do. Fixed it.
Fair point.
Can I go on a little slight detour? Because it does actually bear on this.
Okay.
I was watching a chat between Stephen Fry and Steven Pinker. It was about an hour and 10, 20 minutes, and they were talking about Steven Pinker's new book. And it was really disappointing because it was mostly excellent until they started talking about people like Demore and Milo and Jordan Peterson, and they were just all these all right figures, and they just swallowed the mainstream bullshit, and they weren't questioning. But what was worse is the whole point about Pinker's book is it's about Enlightenment values being under threat and under attack and defending them, and his focus is on attacks from the right, and we all know that's entirely the wrong side. All the
I don't know if it's entirely, but it's definitely a big blind spot.
But what's more is Pinker himself has been subjected to attacks from the left with that talk he did where they misquoted him.
Yeah,
and
I heard that.
And what did and he's talking with Fry and he's saying as if the right did that to him.
Really?
Yeah, it was gobsmacking, and I'm thinking, how can they miss this?
I think that Pinker, along with a lot of other, even Sam Harris, a lot of people who are like high up and they're really well known in the mainstream. They have all the exposure, you know, they show up in television. That those people all still watch television as well, and they don't use alternative.
They don't fact check. That's the frightening thing.
Well, I don't know with the fact check, but they definitely don't look in alternative media for the news. It's really funny because, like, I heard. I don't watch television at all. It's a lost cause to me. But I knew last night that Stephen Hawking was dead because a couple of people were tweeting it. Mm. You know, that's where. I mean, I know that's a bad way to get your news, but that's where you hear it first.
Why is that a bad way? Why is that a bad way? Why is that worse?
I don't know. I'm not saying it's worse. I'm saying
it's
incomplete. Okay, I'm saying it's incomplete. But when you look at the culture wars and when you have a lot of inside information about people like Count Dankula, for instance, and what's going down, or Goodfella, people being rights violated in UK, left, right, and center, and you know all the background, and this is not this information. You cannot get this depth of information from a newspaper or anything, because you have to be in the scene to know about this. And I think that these people that are like really well known, like Pinker, they're like in a bit different strata of society. They're still in the old media. And they just think that that gives them a complete picture. They really genuinely think that. They actually don't believe that there's a big underbelly of stuff happening, and that there's great insights about the culture wars, and that you cannot get that insights from the mainstream media because it's hollowed. It's completely what's it called? Unterwandert. It's completely hollowed out by activists, by leftist activists who own the media. I know I sound like a conspiracy theorist now, but I can prove that shit. You know,
the homogeneity of message. It's hollowed out, but it's just that there's a homogeneous message, which is they're all saying the same thing. So if he flips channels or he looks at a different paper, he's still seeing the same information.
Yeah, it sounds coherent. If you go to the mainstream media, if you watch daytime television, BBC or something, and you watch different news reports, it sounds coherent. It's really frightening, and they leave out so much stuff.
Well, that's why I asked you why it was wrong to get the news of Hawking's death on Twitter, because at least you got the news of his death. You can no longer rely on mainstream media to tell you. They might tell you something like that, but there were other things they were not
probably told about that. It's just, I just wanted to make the point that I didn't need television or radio to know it. I knew at night that he was dead. You know, I didn't have to switch on the check-in with the mainstream media and wait for them to feed it to me. I knew it already. You know, that's the point.
Mm. That's why I questioned
because it's just people saying, you know, hey, this happened, you know.
Yeah.
And just pass it on, you know.
Which is all news is.
May I say something? May I interject?
Please.
Oh, wonderful. I had posted in the chat box that free speech is a state of mind.
Yep, I understand. I'm going to interrupt you already.
Wait. Just give me 1 second. to justify what I said in the chat. Come on, don't be petulant. Don't be petulant.
I'm sorry.
Here's what it is. Here's an example. So, truck drivers, do you remember when they got the old CB radios or the old radios so they can talk back and forth with each other, right?
Yeah.
Well, the federal government wanted to regulate that and charge them licensing fees. None of them did it. They just said, no, we're not going to do that. And so they chatted back and forth with each other, and there was nothing bad that came of that. Now, the best example is when Mises was talking about free speech in England back when they had blasphemy laws. They said that because the people in England believed in free speech, blasphemy laws were never really used, and they had more free speech than when they ended the blasphemy laws. So when it comes down to it, you're only as free as society dictates that you're free.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Yeah.
It's the absolute truth. But the problem we're seeing now is that these young people have been sold the narrative that there is such thing as hate speech, and that even if something is truthful, if it's mean, they shouldn't say it. Therefore, we are all, even us in the good old US of A, going to lose our right to freedom of speech because the collective is dictating it.
Yeah. No, I mean,
that's the problem. But unfortunately, I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, I kind of disagree, because we have the problem in Europe that we do not really have a law-protected form of free speech.
I mean, that's true, Modwain, but at the end of the day, what Alicia's saying is, it doesn't matter if we don't have the law, if no one is going to implement the laws we have, because the society is against them. However, what the government's doing at the moment is it is gradually feeling how far it can push the restrictions, and it is doing it on the internet, and there's all this noise in the media from very vocal MPs saying, oh, look at all the hate speech I get. Apparently, the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, was in an American conference in the last day or so, saying exactly the same thing. We need the law, we need the law, and governments will do this.
But the problem with free speech is that because we don't have protected free speech in most of the countries of Europe, government can crack down on everyone who they don't like to talk about, or at least what they don't like to be heard.
If the culture allows it.
If the culture allows it, yes.
And unfortunately, most countries in Europe allow this.
Yeah, but it's changing.
They
didn't used to.
Well, it didn't show up as much as it did, but it kind of did, though. I mean, we've always had a country where certain opinions were frowned upon, to say the least, and people were already trying to jail people for certain opinions.
When was this? When was the consensus? You know, I think there was a consensus about what was bad speech at one stage, and people are under the illusion that this still exists. You know, maybe 20 years ago.
Give a very simple example: Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, and France. You can still be jailed for denying the Holocaust.
Yeah,
and this is going back since the Second World War. So I'm sorry, but if nothing else, this proves that we didn't have freedom of speech, because denying the Holocaust is a jailable offense.
Who got jailed for that in the UK?
In the UK, I don't think anyone got jailed, but in Germany, a few people did.
But it's also not socially accepted to deny.
Well, yeah, that too.
So it was never really a big thing.
Yeah, so it's socially accepted to prosecute people for denying it, as opposed to the opposite.
Well, but people did get prosecuted for denying it, and people did go to jail for denying it.
That's what I said, because it's socially accepted to prosecute them.
But therein lies the problem.
But that's the case with all laws. I mean, a classic example is speeding. Speeding is one of the least supported laws you can have.
Yeah.
Because people don't view it as bad. People openly complain about enforcement cameras and the fines they levy.
Mm-hmm.
So people's attitude to the law is highly contingent and highly flexible.
But if you already have a government that is willing to jail people for wrong thing.
But that's the point. That's new. That is in the UK.
No,
that is new.
Yeah, no, it's not. But we didn't notice it that much because it didn't.
Oh, come on!
As I said, Holocaust denial.
No, the right of them to jail people, but they didn't jail people. Now they are.
Well, yeah, now they are. But the fact that people. The fact is that they already had the chance and they now feel brave enough to do it.
Which is what I said about them pushing the boundaries, seeing how far they can go with it. Because the government will always do that. Government will always be authoritarian by intent.
But the problem is that at this point in time, no one seems to be able to push back. So what's going to happen, or what I'm afraid that is going to happen, is that people will find a way to push back. But you can't push back verbally. And I think it was Kennedy who said this, making peaceful revolution impossible basically creates the only option that is left, a violent revolution.
Yeah. You know, I mean, and this seems obvious because was it Raven said,
yeah,
you know, when you suppress it, the pressure will build up from underneath. And they're not giving people a legitimate means of voicing their concerns.
But I'm really scared of what's going to happen, because in all fairness, if we look at the UK now, both the Tories and the Labour are both a fucking joke.
Well, the trouble is our right wing, unlike, say, America, has always had an authoritarian impulse. So in America, you have the authoritarian left versus the anti-authoritarian right. Whereas in Britain, it was always the authoritarian right versus the anti-authoritarian left until the left became authoritarian. And so we have two lots of authoritarians, and they're just falling over each other to implement hate speech laws and restrictions. And
yeah, but there's something inherently scaring in this, because scary in this. Because we are basically numbing down society. We are making people unable to speak out. I mean, I've
well, and they're not just unable, but jailing them for it.
Yeah, I mean, in the UK, there was a guy who got 12 months of prison sentence because he dropped a piece of bacon on the doorstep of a mosque.
He's dead now.
He got killed in jail.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is scary, you know. And I was one of those who signed the petition for a free speech law, and I got a letter from my MP telling me that no, everything's just hunky-dory, all the restrictions they have in place are just right, and it sent shivers down my spine. Because you can listen to any of the advocates for full free speech, and what they say is true. Where do you draw the line?
Yeah, and
There's no line.
To draw the line.
There's no lines.
Yeah, you
All
can't
just
put a line
bloody
anywhere but
notches
at
of
the
grey.
very end. Because people will say, "Oh, but you can't screen fire in a burning building." But what you have to do is prosecute people for the consequences of the speech, not for the speech itself. But what the government are doing with banning people from talking to Tommy Robinson is banning them for their speech itself, or worse, the anticipation of their speech.
Yeah.
And there's, I'm,
In other words, it's censorship.
yeah, well, that too.
Definitely.
But I'm scared because it's something more than just censorship.
I think and there needs to be a backlash, and it's no good to say what it is. Like censorship is just an effect, right? And that's a desired effect, right? So they want to apply censorship, but obviously they don't want to say that it's censorship. So what they do is they apply certain rules, right? And this is what you need to attack, not the censorship, not the effect that people can't talk or can't be heard anymore. That's only an after effect. I think you have to go into the principle. And when they say something like your planned activities whilst in the United Kingdom bear a serious threat to the fundamental interests of society, that's what you need to attack. You need to attack that and say, okay, please spell out what are the fundamental interests of society. You haven't thought that through. Please, you don't even know what the fuck fundamental
this
interests
is the problem, though.
actually, what's it called? The fundamental interests that you pretend to schützen, to protect. You don't know them. You can't spell them out. But you need to force them to.
But this is the problem. There is no such thing as the fundamental interests of society.
But that's exactly
society is not homogenous.
But that's exactly what. But that's exactly what you need to spell out. You need to force politicians to spell it out.
No. No, it's not a question of spelling out. It's just a lie because there is no.
But I know that it's a lie, okay? But yeah, they won't believe you. It is a lie until you make them spell it out, and then they'll have nothing.
Oh,
or you force them to show their hand and show that they're really fascist. See, that's the two outcomes. Either they'll say, well, actually, we haven't thought it through. We actually have to sit down and find out what are the fundamental interests of society. Maybe you have to run polls. Or they say, well, the fundamental interest is obviously diversity. And then they just have to go the Canadian way.
It's more simple than that. When someone says the interests of society, they mean their own.
Yeah, of course. But at least force them to spell it out. That's all I'm saying. Because
the problem is with multiculturalism, they have sufficiently fragmented society that if you have enough large chunks, you can't get a consensus.
You mean there's no cohesion?
Yeah.
Well, it's like if you have a sufficiently large section of society who have generally the same interests, you can form a consensus, and then you can say,
no,
those are interests we want.
That's the wrong word, John. They don't want consensus. They want majority. They want power. It's, consensus is not.
They don't want consensus. That's what I'm saying. The multiculturalists destroyed consensus.
It's majority. It's just majority rule. Invite as many people as possible, so you get a strong. You're creating a strong statement. You're creating pressure basically, and that everybody has to bend down to. They're trying to create a majority, but. I don't think that they care much about consensus, and that's really.
I'm not saying they can't care about consensus. I'm saying they're deliberately undermining the ability to form a consensus.
Yeah.
I don't know if they do that deliberately either. I think that they ignore it. I don't think that they say, "Oh, we want people not to have consensus." They just say, "We ignore the other. We close our eyes to the other meaning, to the other opinion. We pretend it's not there." So they really haven't thought it through. I think they really, really, really think that the right wing is just a minority, that they can be completely ignored, and they really need to be. Shown that there's a big group of people who disagree.
It's not right and left are really the wrong terms.
Yeah,
this is the problem.
But the problem is that that's the measure that they use, and that's the language you have to talk to them first.
Our government is allegedly right wing, and it's blatant, really active feminists, even though it's a conservative. Allegedly right-wing government. It's anything but socially conservative.
Yeah.
And so this language of left and right, we can't allow them to use it because they could say, oh, these people are right wing. No, they're not. There's nothing to indicate that Tommy Robinson is right wing. I've never heard him speak on economics.
He's pretty liberal, actually.
Probably.
Yes,
as most of these people are.
Sagan had an interview with him 2-3 years ago, and he was asking him all these questions. But he's also in favor of freedom of speech, and he's not about authoritarian issues.
Yeah. Which used to be a left-wing position, strangely.
Everything to the right of Stalin is left nowadays, right?
The Overton window.
So.
I have to refill this.
But if it's deliberately or it's not deliberately, either way, it is pretty handy for the politicians. They can take this advantage because we're all split up. The right cannot join together because they will be shamed as fascists. And in the meanwhile, while we in society are talking against each other and we're split up, they are pushing this European Union agenda through it because we cannot come together and protest. So does it really matter if it's deliberately or not? Because either way, they take advantage of it. It's pretty clear of that. So they just push their, let's call it globalist agenda to our throats.
I would suggest there was an interesting article I saw, which was showing how the Saudi money and the Saudi influence has had a profound influence on Western politics. And I would suggest that the politicians themselves are far too incompetent or short-term to plan any of it, but that those giving them the suggestions are anything but incompetent or, without a plan.
I find it hard to believe there are no entities who are not planning this. I cannot.
There's too much happening simultaneously across the world.
Exactly.
To be coincidence.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is true. It's too much of a coincidence, so to speak.
I mean, Alicia does a great look at the education side of this, and I think it's a very wide, broad assault that's undertaken. The sound tinfoil hatty.
Is it really tinfoil hatty? Because every time, if you take an example of George Soros, it's the biggest example, but he's not the only one. He is investing money in a lot of shady NGOs and other Muslim Brotherhood and all these kinds of groups, which are not in line with Western values. So, and every time you bring it up, other people are going like, that's tinfoil hat stuff. But it's actually black on white. He is sponsoring it. So yeah, who's behind this? That's the big question, I guess.
I don't think it's a who. Because
there's lots of who's.
Yes, lots of who's.
There's so many billionaire, creepy, crackpot, freaky, churchy, culty people behind all of this that they're just feeding off of each other. I mean, I still can't believe that church of whatever is backed by these billionaire Americans that are pushing the transgender agenda, and then the pedophile rings, and then I mean, it's all like they each have their own little thing that they want to do, and every single one of them does want to silence people and have absolutely no more free speech because they don't want them to be outed.
They have shared interests.
Yeah. They really do. It's disgusting. But what's the point of talking about them? Because think about it. The men that are pulling all of these strings actually are white males. And now, if you say white males, you're a feminist, right? So for all we know, they were the ones that got the feminists talking about, oh, let's make it where it's like a conspiracy theory. So if I say this white male who transitioned is a billionaire and he's pushing the transgender agenda, then people will be like, oh, she's a radical feminist.
The only thing I would say is that worldwide, they're not just white.
Yeah.
Worldwide, there's plenty of billionaires who are anything but white.
Yep.
Like, yeah, the Saudi Arabians, but
no, Saudi Arabia, Brunei, China. There's a lot of non-white people.
They have.
You don't consider Asians white?
Well,
are you Asians?
I don't care, but I mean,
I guess that's where our this is why communication, obviously, when I normally talk to people, I forget that I have to ask them what they consider white, because I forget.
That's a very good question, but that's the main question, and nobody ever talks about what is white.
Yeah, I think white is anybody that has the allele, one of 3 alleles. So if you have 1 allele, you're white, you're a start of white, and then if you have all 3, then you're super white.
Okay.
That's
not what most people use.
No, I mean, most people mean white as euphemism for European.
Yeah.
Well, then what are Americans considered? Are we considered white?
No, you're descended from Europeans.
Of European descent, yeah. Because you consider Hispanics. Hispanics are not Spanish. Spanish are European and they are white. Hispanics are not European and they're not white.
They're actually considered white under the UN census. So they list them as white, and then they have a sub list that lists their ethnicity as Hispanic.
Yeah.
Yeah, high desert, super white.
No, but that's the thing, though. I mean, who do we consider white? Are we going to call Caucasians white? Well, if we think Caucasians are white, that means that the Middle East and Turkey has a lot of white people too, so they're white as well.
Well, a lot of Aryans are of Indian Persian descent.
Yeah,
they're just melanin challenged, not white.
Challenge.
I mean, trouble is I don't care.
Transblacks.
I understand. I was just saying that as an example. The reason why we can't talk about things is because these rich billionaires that run these NGOs have made it where we can't even communicate anymore.
Yeah, well, you know, if you notice, there was a time when the villains were the 1%. I noticed how it steered away from that.
But that's because the 1% is also, how do you call it, a sliding scale.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, every European is part of the 1% worldwide. Well, almost every European.
No.
Well, school in Australia, they're teaching now that white men are more oppressive than the 1%.
Yeah, and that was my point. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they've shifted. Someone has put a lot of effort into shifting the narrative.
Yeah, and it's creepy. It's worldwide. It's creepy. Who?
Could it be?
But isn't it fun? I mean, is it not going to be like in 50 years' time or even 30 years' time when people will look into the history books that those ideas will be looked back on, like what we look when we look on Mein Kampf and see people describing racial purity, you know?
Yeah,
it's the same thing. It's a ludicrous idea that just at the moment is on mode. But it's completely devoid of reality.
But it depends if the consequences are as bad, because the way the narrative's going, where they're dehumanizing people based on race and sex, you know, I hear people say things like the male species.
But it's not sustainable. You know it. You've seen it. You see it with me too. You see, like. You know, people are shunning women now because of it, and in the long term, they won't take it. they're just going to take it down. You know, so in my mind, I always said that feminists are the biggest misogynists, they're the true misogynists of this time, but they're actually systematically misogynist as well. They're not just they have a system. So I think that it can boil down to 2 or 3 things, and that it's kind of mirroring what they accuse others of. That's really what they are, and racism seems to do the same kind of transmogrification, you know. Racist is usually the one that calls everybody else racist because he's so focused on this.
Projection. Yeah, but maybe that's the thing going around with this all. How did you call it, Alicia? Crackpots, these billionaire crackpots. Maybe they have done so much horrific shit with all the wars going on in this world, and fucking up all our countries, that they are actually feeling guilty and that they are projecting that. Could that be?
I don't know. I wish that we could say that they were feeling guilty. But when you examine each billionaire that funds each little tiny movement on their own, they are crackpots. Like the billionaire guy that wants to just get rid of genders altogether. He wants to be a transhumanist, and he wants to get rid of death. I mean, I would love to think that they had this change of heart, but there is absolutely no evidence of it. As a matter of fact, it looks like they actually think they're doing the right thing by destroying humanity and the West.
I want to ask you a question. Where do you think these billionaires get their ideas from? Are they the source of these ideas, or who is behind this?
Well,
Are these millionaires? Are they like blue collar people who just invented themselves, or did they all enjoy college education?
No, go back in time. Go back in time. When you look at each and every movement on its own, you'll see that the person pushing it tends to be somebody that fucked up really bad, and then some sleazy, churchy type person. And no offense to any churches, I'm talking like culty person is standing in the wings that tells them exactly what they want to hear and helps them refocus their energy. I mean, the dude pushing the transgender thing, he's a billionaire.
But he didn't invent this. He only has the money and the power, but the ideas that you think that come from him, they don't come from him. They come from somewhere else. Yeah, this is the point. So the question is not... They are not the motorists, you know.
No. But there are lots of private think tanks.
No, you have to find the source.
Fund these private think tanks, and we don't know what comes out of a lot of these private think tanks.
Well, we do know that the Frankfurt School, that the KGB has like for 40 years now indoctrinated Western universities, and that a lot of the ideas that we see bubbling up in the mainstream now have been gestated from the nucleus idea of a class warfare. It's just in different kind of clothes, you know. It's classes, it's genders.
Far enough. I don't think you're going back far enough.
Maybe not.
That's what I'm trying to say is that it's like a dominoes thing. It's kind of like, have you ever read a really, really, really old book and you really agreed with it and you just carry on the ideas of that really old book? It's the same kind of concept. It goes back to
like archetypical stories that Jordan Peterson was referring to.
Yeah, you could go that direction, or you could just say that the Prussian king lost a battle to Napoleon, and so all of a sudden they decided to push public schooling and that they would mold children into the shape of what the state wants. That same schooling system created both Hitler and Stalin, who
these are tools.
I'm sorry, Marx.
No, you're right. But you're right. I mean, these are tools, right? So these are tools of power. So obviously education is one of the most powerful tools to channel power, you know. But these are tools. You still need an ideology to, push it into a direction.
Yeah, no, but it's not just the ideology. You also need a strategy. to actually get your ideology implemented. Because there's a lot of ideologies or a lot of ideological ideas, and that's a world away from actually successfully implementing what you want.
But the strategy is already there. It's the public school system. Every single thing that you can trace wrong now is implemented in every single school system. Every single school system is pushing all of this crap, and they're also pushing this idea of censorship. So you don't even need a plan of action anymore because it's already in place.
Anymore, but you had to get
it's
to
not
this point.
I don't think it's everything. We used to have ethics in school. They got rid of it. There used to be social studies.
When did we have ethics? When did we ever have
We had ethics in Germany as an alternative to religion if we were non-religious people, and that was interesting.
Are you a German?
Yes.
Are you German? Okay.
Yes.
So you realize
I live in Ireland. I have emigrated.
Our school system is what has tainted and infected the entire West. It's what keeps everybody under control. It was designed in Germany, and then it was brought over to America and into Japan, into other places. That very system of indoctrination is what has infected everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's from the Frankfurt School of Thought.
Can I quote Vladimir Lenin? Give me just one generation of youth and I'll transform the whole world. This is Lenin.
Yeah, but this is true. But this is not Lenin though, because this is religion as well. This is something people have said as far back as history goes.
Yeah,
if you can indoctrinate the kids, you have the society.
Yeah. So that's new to me that Germany would have invented the school systems, the worldwide school systems.
Well, Germany didn't invent it, but it comes very much from the Frankfurt School of Thought.
But the schools are older than the Frankfurt School. I mean, the Frankfurt School is just a counter-revolution.
No, the Frankfurt School isn't a counter-revolution, and the education systems we are seeing in the world now are very much based off what the Frankfurt School of Thought brought up.
No, it goes further back than that. It goes back further than that. It was Prussia. It was the Prussian model that started it all. It goes back to this speech given.
I don't see that. I don't know. I mean, if I remember my own education in school, I didn't see that there was much teaching of class warfare or things like, that whole thing.
But so what we're talking about though is that it doesn't. So back then, right? So when I give a presentation on when the American school system took on the Prussian model, the push at that time was not this gender identity or class warfare. The push at that time was to create people smart enough to work in the factories, but not wanting to move up. So basically, whatever was needed by the government and the whoever was in control at that time, that's what they were teaching you. And at this time, whoever is in control are the people that are pushing for the class warfare. But at that, so it doesn't. You can't look back at what you were learning back then and say, "Oh, well, it wasn't in charge back then."
It just sounds like you're mixing up a lot of stuff. Like you're mixing a lot of things together. But I think that isn't one thing that in the American school of thought, it wasn't the Calvinist system a big influencer in America. The Calvinist system, as in you work hard. That whole idea from the dishwasher to the millionaire, that everything has to be merit based, and there's no inherent value. It's more materialistic kind of view of the world.
It wasn't taught like that. You have to see what. This is what everybody is missing, and this is what's frustrating, is that if you want to understand the school system, if you want to understand what your children are learning, you need to look at their textbooks, you need to look at their worksheets, you need to look at their quizzes, and then now the gem where they hide all the good indoctrination is on the tests. So if you were to go back in time to when you were a kid, what you would do is you would want to look at what you were learning at that time and not only look at your assignments, but look at your tests, because no matter what you think you were taught and that you were taught in a better way that was more free and about this or that, you wouldn't know because you were a product of that indoctrination.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is really cultural norms, though. You know, if you teach your kids about like sharing apples or something, you know, because they know the concept of apples and the concept of sharing and money and all that, you know, that's cultural norms. So I don't think you can teach children without like taking ideas or concepts from the culture. And in a capitalist system, that would be like capitalist ideas.
Okay, so I think I'm having a failure to communicate here or express my ideas.
I think you just have to be more concrete. Give some examples, maybe.
Every single lesson is designed to indoctrinate the kids. Yeah, now in the RRRR in Australia, every single lesson is to indoctrinate. But back then, there was specific agendas that were being pushed and moved forward. And it has nothing to do with the cultural norms. It has to do with whomever was in charge wanting the people to be like that. It wasn't the way that it was, most certainly not the way that it was, but the way that they wanted it to be. They, in Germany, in Prussia, when it started, they did not want individual free-thinking youth. They wanted collective, mind-controlled, little soldiers. Sacrificed everything for the state, and that's how we got both Karl Marx and Hitler.
See, I come from a part in Germany that was mortal enemies of the Prussians. I come from Bavaria, and they were like dead enemies of the Prussians. They hated the Prussians. So it's a very Catholic
school in Germany. He was an Austrian.
Yeah, you see, Bavaria is very close to Austria. It's down in the south, you see. So there is kind of a divide between northern Germany and southern Germany, which is just was just much more rural and more, you know, down to earth. And like the northern Germans, the Prussians would have looked down their nose at these like wild people from the south, you know. In a way, I feel that seems to be a stronger connection to Celtic roots there as well. So I don't think that it was as homogeneous as you describe it. And when you talk about Prussians influencing Germany, I think that there must be a cutoff point. It's not necessarily something that you would have seen in the late 60s, early 70s in the what you call indoctrination of school children in Germany, but it may well have been like whatever in the 30s or 40s or whatever. I wouldn't know. Also, the Frankfurt School isn't that a much later idea? Isn't that a post revolutionary kind of thing?
No, the Frankfurt School of Thought is more or less introduced at the beginning of the 20th century, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, that early.
Sorry?
That early, yeah?
Yeah, it was, I think, even before. I'm not really sure if it was before the First World War or after, but I'm thinking it was before the First World War. I could check it really fast.
Yeah, you should, because it's embarrassing. I'm not a history buff, so I wouldn't know. I wouldn't claim.
Okay, here we go.
The school system I'm talking about began when like Karl Marx was like 5. So what year did he turn 5? Let's see. So he was born in Prussia in 1818. So the school model that I'm talking about started in the 1800s. And it went from there. And that school system was brought over here to the United States, but it only infected some states because the states have the right to choose their own educational system, just like Utah is one of the only states that is not pushing the CSE, which is being pushed from the UN.
What's the CSE?
It's comprehensive sexuality education.
Oh my God, that sounds terrible.
The Frankfurt School of Thought more or less got started in 1923 by Karl Grunberg.
All right.
It was after the fact.
So
yeah.
after the revolution.
It's after the Russian Revolution and after the First World War. Basically, Marx was on the side of defeating the Prussian Empire, but at the same time, he wasn't on the side of the English and the French.
See, one thing I wanted to note when I was talking earlier about feminism, I had forgotten about it, but I don't just think that it's misogynist, but I think that it's a deeply reactionary movement. Feminism. It doesn't have its own ideas. It's very reactionary or counter-reactionary.
Yeah,
it's elitist.
It's very elitist indeed.
Yeah, but I don't think it has genuine ideas. It's just reactionary and misogynist. That's what it's about, in its kernels, you know.
It's about taking control. It's about putting people into leadership because they're part of the cult.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they thrive on a system by replacing. It's like the Borg, you know. You have to have or it's like an ivy that kills a tree, you know. You have to have a structure there that you can subvert first, and then build your structures on it, and then hopefully not kill the tree. That's how that works, you know. It's like a parasite.
They talk against particular systems. Well, their actions are merely to be the people implementing the systems.
Yeah, grabbing the power, but they're built on existing systems. It's not, then they don't bring anything new. It's just like reactionary.
No,
they say there is patriarchy, and now you have ruled for 1,000 years, and now we will rule.
About it. If you actually pay it, if one pays attention to them, they are very blatant. It's all about who's in charge, who's the leaders, who's getting the money. It's not about who's doing anything.
Yeah, it's still a problem though, because what we see is that we have an education system that is more or less against our kids, and I'm not really sure if it's because of the Prussian education system or it's because of what people are pushing into the education system.
Could we ask
if we had an education system,
what's the formative like attributes of the Prussian system? Is it just one of the things I would say, is it that you obey?
Yes.
Is that one of the like main things that, you know, if you're talking about soldiers, you have the chain of command and you have authority, and you hand down to the children, you know, edicts which have to be followed. That's it. And you don't necessarily teach children to think for themselves. It's something
that's also
I find interesting. Now that I've moved into Ireland 20 years ago, and my daughters were going to school here, but it's very interesting how they teach children here, you know. It's the same thing. It's a really top-down approach. It's not the same thing. It's very different to what I experienced in my youth, you know, where they would actually teach people more to like think for themselves and question stuff. And to me, that was kind of interesting to see that it's not like this here. And that it's really, you know, that's just the Irish way, you know.
No, a lot of it's practicality, though. If you've got a small number of teachers or whoever in charge of a large number of children, you have to maintain a system of control. And the more they have gone away from violent methods of control, which they've gone from rampant corporal punishment to not even allowed to touch them.
Yeah.
They have to change to a different methods of control. And what you do, you have to then
indoctrinate.
You have to foster obedience.
Yeah. I think it's more about self-censorship. You know, it's you instill certain morals, and then the little systems that the children will kind of censor themselves and like regulate themselves. So it's quite clever. You don't really force them to do something against their will. You force them to believe that it's right. But it was something new to me. Anyway, I thought it was something that was coming like from the English school system, and it wasn't really something that I would have thought anything like what we had in Germany, you know, including, you know, school uniforms, for instance, you know.
I think what Alicia was talking about certainly wasn't particularly reminiscent of the English system, certainly as it used to be, mostly because the English system was way too incompetent.
Well, I can tell you, I know where the transgender movement started. I know who thought of that idea. It was a Russian philosopher.
Cool.
Oh, yeah. Philosophers, shoot them all.
So if you wanna find the source of almost all of the horrific things that come out of you know, these ideas and propaganda, it does seem to come from philosophers. Seriously. And they were just trying to think outside the box. I mean, think about Descartes, right? He's one of the leading founders of postmodern crap.
Oh, Descartes?
That's not what he intended. That's not what he intended. And so you
I was going to say Descartes was pre-modern.
Well, no. So when you start looking at the postmodernists, where they get their ideas. So if you try to, you know, you trace back all the roots to where they come from, like the feminist movement and all this stuff. Like the feminist movement came from some freaking cult a long time ago. You'll find that it doesn't matter because the original intent of the movement is always skewed. And that's why censorship is so important to all of our controllers, because then people like us, like what we're doing right now, back in the past when all of these ideas were coming to fruition, would have been considered a crime and we would all go to jail. And now today's controllers want to do the exact same thing. I mean, look at us. We have a Uton, we have English, we have German. Where is everybody else from?
Yeah, but I have to admit though, Alicia, and I agree with you, but at the same time, there's a reason why I use an avatar. There's a reason why Dick Cheesehead uses an avatar. There's a reason why Real Raven uses an avatar. We are not safe when we speak out.
Nobody is safe when we speak out. No, sorry? No, and you're right. You would get fired. You would get fired. And I've said this before, and I agree with you. I am very lucky that my political ideologies and my speaking out against what I speak out against is in line with the society that is surrounding me, or else I would lose my job, or God forbid I went to jail. So I understand why you guys have to not show your face because of free speech. But free speech, it even when you have free speech, you still don't have free speech because you're limited by the people that are paying your bills, because you have to have a job so you can pay your damn taxes. Sorry.
No, you're right. It's quite interesting. You can stop paying taxes, or you can avoid a lot of taxes by stepping out of the economic system, by just refusing to earn much. You know, once you go into poverty, then you can avoid almost all the taxes. It's an interesting concept.
Which is why they're turning to prison. And
it's quite interesting. When I had my full-time job, I couldn't afford to have my children educated, and now that I'm out of work, they can get grants and they can actually get educated. You know, when you earn too much as a single family father, then it's almost prohibitively expensive to live an alternative lifestyle, unless you live in a really streamlined kind of little box, for rent somewhere.
It does seem that the modern trends of the price of higher education and I know it varies from a different country, but in the UK, I was lucky enough to get a free public higher education shortly before it changed. And now it seems to be a massive method of control, because once you've been through higher education,
same.
You are
Germany.
literally in hock to the government, because you have your student loans owned by the government. And you better be a good little worker and work and pay off your loans.
Yeah. It's also interesting that you have to play along with the state's rules, and have to fill your tax receipts and everything. They take a lot of money in advance, and you can get it back, but you have to cooperate with the system to get some of the money back. So you have to play by the rules. If you don't, you lose out. For decades I didn't do it, so I paid a lot more tax that I actually owed. I didn't ask for it back at the end, because it's just too much hassle to fill in the forms. Which is, when you have a high-paying job, you don't mind. But then you don't do holidays or things like that, and you just keep paying your bills, and you're constantly in debt. But if you look at it, if you have to pinch the pennies, then you really have to play along with the system, and you're interwoven with that machine, the state. You have to know all the tricks. Have to know all the different grants that you can get, all the forms that you can fill. So you get it's more symbiotic.
Yeah, but at the other hand, if you're doing well for yourself, if you're doing well for yourself, you're taking advantage of that same system. So why would you want to change it?
Well, you can only take advantage if you play by the rules, which means you have to know all the laws, you have to fill the right forms, you have to enter them, fill them the right way, and enter them at the right time, and then maybe you'll get back what you owed. It's not instantly. The system isn't instantly justified. It's in my mind it's unjust, because it will punish people for not playing along by the rules or not knowing about the rules, because people won't tell you, oh, the tax rules are partly clandestine. You have to hire a specialist to explain them to you and give him a little bit of money so that you can get your money back. It's so weird. It's really strange. I don't know if it's justified in this day and age, because I think with the IT you could actually deduct tax at source in real time, rather than, oh, you pay us more just in case, because we don't.
That's a system we have here in the UK. For most people, they pay pretty accurately.
That's good. I think that's a good thing. I think that is a good thing.
Only people with their own financial.
If you're self-employed, then it's a problem. Yeah, once you're self-employed, it becomes a real problem. It's something I'm looking into, because you basically don't know how much you owe. You pay at the end of the tax year, and it might be a big bill or a small bill, and you don't
have all kinds of deadlines, and you have to argue for exemptions.
As a rule of thumb, assume you will have to pay a third.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, hold a third in reserve for yourself.
Mm-hmm. I always assumed it was half.
Oh well, if it's half, it's a lot.
It's not half, but if you want to be on the safe side, you put away half, and then you have enough, and you won't go to jail at the end of the year for something that you have earned. I still don't quite understand it.
Holy crap! Half.
Yeah, I mean, you keep half just to avoid prison. Obviously you don't actually pay half. You can prove. I like Bernard Chapin's idea of the 10% state. It should be 10%, and that's it. Should be more.
Yeah, I don't mind paying taxes if I know that it's being used in a positive way, and that can be for border control and streets and school and whatnot.
I think 10% would actually take care of it. If you had a flat 10% tax, then we wouldn't be wasting our money on all this crap that they wasted on.
They
It
will
used to be
always
10%.
waste money.
The
That's
church,
the
I
trouble.
think the church charged 10%.
The
It's
time.
actually the church tenth, they called it. The
The
10th.
time.
They had plenty of money. Look at them. They got plenty of money.
Yeah, some of the richest organizations in the world are churches.
See, the one thing what I don't understand about taxes is this really interesting thing that when you sell a good, you already pay value-added tax. So you're taking away, I don't know, if it's Ireland, 24, 25% is a high percentage. So a quarter is already lost. And then from
No, it's not how it works. Not how it
Okay.
works. It works the other way around. Because it's value added, which means you sell the goods for your price, but that's not the price you charge the customer.
Yeah, the customer pays the 25%. Okay, so the customer pays the 25%. It doesn't really matter who pays it. It's not the state who pays it. It's some person who pays it. And then from what your winnings are, well, not from the winnings, from the whole money that you take in, you pay taxes.
No,
you can't actually say
you don't.
you can't actually claim full expenses.
No, the government tax is entirely separate. It is handled entirely separately in the accounts. It never shows as part of your own figures in the books.
What I'm talking about is income tax at the moment, right?
No. But that's the point. The value-added tax. If you're charging value-added tax, the value-added tax has a special treatment within your accounts. It doesn't show up on your books as any of your.
See, that you can tell me a lot about technicalities here, but at the end of the day, it's extra money that goes from the people to the state, and then it's taxed again in income tax as well. There's more money going from the people to the state. That's all I'm saying. Is that when you create a good and you sell it, and then you pay yourself for it and you get income, then you are penalized twice. Okay, one part of the penalty is obviously carried by your customers. You have to charge them more, so they pay for it. But what I'm saying is that you're taxed double. That's the problem. You're not just taxed once, and then when the goods change hands again and again and again, every fucking time the state opens the hand and
it doesn't work like that. When you pay tax, when you handle VAT. If you buy something, you don't pay VAT on it. The only point at which
hold on, stop. Okay, let me stop you right there. I'm a software developer. I don't buy stuff. I sell ideas. Don't buy anything for it.
But I have done the tax.
That what I sell there is coming completely. Let me just finish. It completely comes from my head. It's completely from my head. It's completely. There's no other products that it's just. It's like I open up my veins and let the blood flow out, and I sell it.
Buy a computer,
yeah,
and you sell a product which is VAT-able.
Yeah,
you deduct the VAT from the cost of your computer, and you get a refund.
Yeah. You
don't pay VAT multiple times. You pay it at the end when the good is sold. And if you're using something which is VAT,
no, you can claim. You do what I don't understand is. Okay, listen. You can claim the VAT for something that you buy a big machine. You pay $1 million, and you can claim back the 200. The 20,000, the 20% of what the machine cost you as expenses, but the other 800,000 you can't claim. Why can you not claim that as well? You still had to pay for the whole machine in order to even start produce stuff. You had to swallow that loss.
No.
Why can you not claim the whole thing?
You're misunderstanding what VAT is, I think, my friend.
Yeah, I hate
VAT is just value-added tax, and. So if you as a company buy something,
just a little bit extra money for the company.
No. Listen, I build a cage.
Alicia, it's your fault.
I build a cage for rabbits. I have a company to build cages for rabbits. So I build a cage for rabbits. Now, the material I need to buy to make the cage will cost me, for example, €100. Now, out of that €100, €20 is value-added tax. So I buy that stuff for €100, and I can ask back the €20 that I had to pay extra from the taxes, because I paid it to the taxes. I can ask it back. But then I sell my cage, and when I sell my cage, I will sell it for, let's say, €200.
Yeah. But you cannot claim the full 100 as expenses. That's the problem.
No, I can claim the full 100 as expenses, but listen,
you had to.
Wait a second. The government is not paying all expenses. They're only paying back my value-added tax.
Okay, but what are they taxing? Forget about the VAT. Are they taxing you for 200 or for 100?
No, let me finish. When I sell my completed project, which is a cage, which I will sell for €200.
Yeah.
So then the value-added tax on that is €40. That I have to pay to the government.
Yeah.
But
and then you think you'd have profit, but no. Then you have to pay that to your employees. And then you get income tax, and then they deduct another 40%, or maybe 20%, and then they add another 4% or 7% of USC, which is social tax. So they take another quarter.
Listen, I don't have to pay for employees because I don't have employees. I have a one man.
But then that's your income, and you have to pay income tax on it.
But I only have to pay income tax above a certain amount. So if I make 100,000, then I have to pay income tax. But if I only make 40,000, I don't have to pay that much income tax.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. I mean, that makes sense. If you bake small bread, you're not penalized. If you bake bigger bread, okay, you are penalized to a point. So I understand, and that definitely makes sense. That there should be a minimum. The interesting thing is that. I think that you have to have a critical mass so that you can still live off of it. And I think it's designed in a way that it's...
There's also something else you're misunderstanding. If Mod has a company, that company pays taxes as a company.
Yeah.
Mod has no money from that until his company pays it.
Making money.
So the company's income is not Mod's income until the company pays Mod.
Yeah. So money's in theory changing hands, and then the tax, then the state gets its cut. And then if some of that money has changed hands, and then it's maybe inherited to his sons, then the state can come and get a little cut
only
again. Then if the children who have inherited that money buy something, then they have to pay value-added tax. You see, every time money changes hand, a little bit of the money is taken off. So it's a lot more than just the 20% value-added tax, because every time it changes hands, every time the state gets its fingers on it,
not
every fucking time.
No,
not every time.
Because if you don't have a huge amount of money, you do not pay inheritance tax.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, considering the time and considering that I had to work all day as well, I think we are going to call it quits. It's fun to talk about taxes. We can do that another time.
No, it's not. No, they're very...
We started about...
We have to do it now.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I am going to pull the plug on this one because old man is tired. We did start about free speech. We did talk a lot about that as well. I hope
the freedom in Texas, that's related.
Of course.
I hope everyone in the chat enjoyed our little rambling.
The government takes our taxes so it can constrain our freedom.
We should have a blood
Why
sport
are you
on
going
Texas.
on about taxes? I want to quit the stream so we can call it a night.
It's Alicia's fault.
No, it's not.
No, it's
yes,
not.
It is.
No.
Yes.
Nobody's twisting your head, mate. I didn't see any guns being pointed at your head.
I'm only drunk, so you can't blame me.
Especially not from about 5,000 miles away.
Anyway, we had a good run. I really like to thank you all for coming. I really like to thank you all for talking. Alicia, thank you very much for coming. Dick Cheesehead, long time no see. Thank you very much for coming. John and Real, thank you very much for coming. Anyone want any last words?
Yeah, listen to my Frank Sinatra song. It was a heck of a amount of work again. Frank Sinatra.
Ooh. Give me a link.
L-O-V-E. L-O-V-E.
Oh, that one.
Yeah. L-O-V-E, or our chat turned it into R-A-P-E.
R-A-P-E, yeah. That's a good, that really is a good one. I even shared it on mine. So that's
thanks.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes, you can.
Quick? I want to thank you for allowing me to be live because I'm still banned from being live. So thank you for not censoring me and allowing me to be part of the live community once more.
Well, listen, if you want, you're always welcome here. I'm not sure if it's always fun to be here, but you're always welcome.
It's a sausage fest.
No, it was fun. You know, what I'm going to have to do next time if I see Real Ravens on here, I'll bring my notes because
and a buzzer for
I need my notes, and I was like shuffling around on my desk trying to find my notes, and I think Drusilla misplaced them, and so now I'm like, oh, the one time I need my notes. But
I have my notes.
Thank you, Modwain, for letting me.
Different notes, mate. Different notes.
Live. I appreciate it.
No, but it's always fun to have you, Alicia. So you're always welcome.
And can I just shout out Alicia's channel? Everyone subscribe if you're not.
I will link the channels of every one of you in the description. Dick, are you making videos again, mate?
I'm at this point I'm making one, but it's not going to be on the Dick Cheesehead channel. It's going to be in Dutch because last time I said I was going to dig in the Dutch market because I think it's necessary to do some real activism. It's not going to be behind an avatar. It's going to be with my real face. But if someone is interested, somebody could, or I could make a subtitle, and some of you guys, maybe Modwain, can upload it for the international crowd, or make a link or whatever. So it's not a big secret, but it will be in Dutch, so you have to tolerate it. And
you can always turn the sound down.
I like Dutch. It's funny.
Yeah, well, we're funny, wise guys, huh? But it, yes, I will be starting at the beginning because I'm not. I want to keep it short. I'm sorry, but I start at the beginning at the concept of I'm not really. I don't know the name of it, what I'm going to call it, but it's going to be something in a trend like cultural Marxism or intersectional feminism. Because if I look at the Dutch forums, there's still deniers that there is not such a thing. So I want to go step by step and how this is infiltrated in the companies. And at some point, I'll be addressing the Dutch problems specifically. Okay. So, but it's the beginning is there. So I hope within a month I can upload the video. But I'm also still looking for a Dutch platform.
Okay.
I do have some contacts, but I'm not sure if they think the quality is good enough. But these are big websites. So,
John.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I've said it. Subscribe. Go and watch Alicia because she's brilliant.
Okay. Real Raven.
I already said my thing, but thanks. Okay. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm sorry I interrupted everyone else then, but I think this is where we're going to call it quits. Thank you, everyone in the chat for joining in. As always, it was very appreciative. It was very appreciated. I'm getting tired.
The crowd is growing.
Sorry?
The public is growing. It used to be 5 or 6 viewers. Now we had 10 and 13 at the peak. So
yeah, it's a good thing. It really is. And I'd like to thank you all for coming. And I hope to see you all next time. So now we're going to log out. Let's see if it will work. Let's stop.